I thought I might do a quick just background on my story, just like rough chit chat about my book, how I started to write it, and where we are now. A long time ago, I didn't read a lot of romance and I didn't write romance. I wrote fantasy books with a romance subplot. As you can probably tell, I have a lot of fantasy books and I love fantasy. But I also love romance, and most of the fantasy books that I have read and I own do have a romance subplot, or some kind of romance happens in the story. How did I go from writing fantasy to writing a sports romance? Back in 2019, it was late one evening, and I think I saw something on Instagram, maybe, or maybe it was Twitter. I don't know. I think I saw something online that just made something spark in my head. I'm a big Formula One fan and I've watched it for a very long time. I have a feeling what I read was probably something about women in motorsport, and whatever it was that I read, I think it made me angry and annoyed. And that evening, I wrote the first chapter of this book in a bit of a rage. I had no idea what I was gonna do with this first chapter. It formed in my head very quickly, and I wrote the whole thing on my notes app on my phone in a flurry. And I think I did it at about maybe 1 or 2 a.m. It was late. I know it was late. The story was just in my head and I had to get it out. So I wrote this first chapter of a book I had no intention of writing. I don't know where it came from. It just appeared in my brain and I wrote it down, put it in a Word document, saved it, and then just put it away. At the time, I was writing a young adult fantasy story because that's what I was doing. I was writing fantasy, I was writing young adult stories. I had recently finished doing an MA in writing for young people, so creative writing, but specializing in writing for children and young adults. So yeah, I'm not going to write a Formula One inspired sports romance. Then several years later, this story came back to me and I just thought, you know what, maybe I need to write it. Maybe I need to write this story. More recently, I had gotten into romance. I discovered lots of romance books through joining TikTok and BookTok. I had discovered sports romance, and I just spent a bit of time figuring out a few ideas with this book. I had this first chapter and I thought, you know what, maybe I can turn this into a story. I think I started writing this book properly in either at the very end of 2022 or it might have been the beginning of 2023. Sometime around then, that's when I started writing this story properly and really sitting down and figuring it out and putting everything into it. I said goodbye to fantasy, I said goodbye to young adult stories, and I just properly started writing a sports romance. It was really, really fun. It was a moment of, why haven't I been doing this forever? Everything just felt like it clicked into place. Why didn't I start writing sports romance years ago? Because it just made sense. It felt fresh and new and different, but it also just felt like I was doing something that I should be doing. Like, this is what I should be doing. It was really, really nice not to have to worry about loads of world building, because this is set in a contemporary world. It's set in like a real life situation. So I didn't have to worry about creating a fantasy world. I didn't have to worry about magic systems, because I always used to struggle with magic systems and world building whenever I was writing fantasy. And then all of a sudden I was writing this book where I didn't have to worry about those things or figure it out. I also didn't have to heavily research the sport because I have been watching it almost all my life, I have been watching Formula One longer than I have been writing. So it just came really easy to me in comparison to previous books that I've written or tried to write. So it was an amazing experience.